Our FLAP TV Debate Series 18 continues with the candidates for State Senate, incumbent Senator Dean Tran, the Republican from Fitchburg, and his challenger, Democrat Sue Chalifoux-Zephir, City Councilor from the City of Leominster. Thank you very much for joining us on the heels of our state representative debate a half hour ago. A busy night here at FLAP. Issue 1, what do you see as the most important path for economic growth in north central Massachusetts, and how will you go about driving that effort, Senator?
Well, first of all, I think the most critical component to being able to achieve economic growth and economic development in our district is really to put a focus on infrastructure. And when I'm talking about infrastructure, I mean we have to make sure that our roads and bridges are safe, our buildings are safe for our residents, as well as easy access to the highway. And some of those things that I've already done. I was able to secure $6 billion in the economic development bill, including securing $250,000 to improve Route 117, as well as passing a bill that most people told me it was impossible to do. And my staff and I were able to get a feasibility study on Route 2 to get through the State Senate, through the conference committee, and pass through the legislature. That bill will allow the Mass DOT to do a study on Route 2 to make sure that it is safe for people to travel on, as well as make improvements and expanding Route 2 to attract economic growth to our district.
Thank you. Councilor Chalifoux.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. The key really to economic development, I believe, is workforce training and more vocational training. We have an opportunity here to really rebrand North Central Massachusetts as the place where industry can find highly skilled, ready-to-work workforce. So that would be my first. Objective is to expand the vocational training opportunities that we have in workforce training programs, and to partner with existing universities, the chambers of commerce, because there are some really important, very successful pilot programs that partnerships like the chambers of commerce along with universities can exploit. Second to that is transportation. We need to invest in transportation. We need to invest in public transportation specifically, and I would argue we need to make investments in our commuter rail, which does include extending commuter rail to Gardner.
Just could I add on to what I said?
Yeah.
Just to add on to some of the things that my staff and I have already done in terms of economic development. We were able to secure $1 million for Leominster's Workforce Development Training Center, and as well as securing $100,000 for the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce to devise a 25-year plan for economic development growth. That is something that we in dire need of in the district, as well as we were able to help increase regional transportation funding. And we were able to do that with my colleagues in the Senate. We were able to increase the funding to $88 million, the exact number that they asked us to do.
I gave him a second shot. Did you want to add
Absolutely.
anything?
One other thing that I think we can do better across the region is we can expand partnerships with quasi-public agencies like New View Communities, like the Chambers of Commerce, and we can adopt more of the Devon's model, which is to have pre-permitted, pad-ready opportunities for industries that want to come in and build. So we can make it easy for industries to want to locate here. We can make the permitting process a lot easier, and that, I think, will really attract people to come here.
Issue 2, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court shot down the proposed Fair Share ballot initiative, effectively throwing the issue back into the hands of the legislature, which you'll now have to deal with as a constitutional amendment. Would you support moving Massachusetts to a graduated income tax where people of different incomes pay different percentages, or do you think we should stick with our flat tax rate, which applies to everybody? Councilor Zephir.
I would stay with our flat tax rate. I think that it needs improvement. I think that there are some people who aren't paying their fair share, especially in light of the recent federal tax changes. A lot of people in Massachusetts, particularly high wage earners, have received significant tax breaks, which is a good thing, and hopefully they'll reinvest some of that in Massachusetts. But I would stick with the flat tax rate. And I am a big supporter of the Fair Share Amendment going forward, and will work very hard in the next legislative session to move that forward.
Senator Tran.
Well, thank you, Kevin. There's nothing fair about this Fair Share Amendment. The Massachusetts High Court struck it down by a vote of 5-2 for a reason, and that is because it is a graduated income tax. as well as it has 2 spending measures that they could that deemed to be unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional to earmark money from a Constitution amendment, and that's why it got struck down. Now, there's no way that am I going to ever vote for a graduated income tax, because what happened is that the federal government right now practices a graduated income tax, and it does not work. Massachusetts has a flat tax income, and we're bringing in, we're realizing $1.1 billion in surplus. Do we want to lose that by going to a graduated income tax? I highly doubt it, and that is something that I will never vote for.
May I? Part of the challenge I think that the legislature is going to face is our schools are underfunded by $1 billion. The Fair Share Amendment, actually the Supreme Judicial Court did not say it was unconstitutional. What the Supreme Judicial Court said is that citizens do not have the power to make taxes. They cannot appropriate money. So the legislature does have that authority, and that's why the Fair Share Amendment is coming back to the legislature. It is being worked on currently as we speak by senators who I have spoken with, and I will absolutely support that. Our part of the state is really being shortchanged in terms of the funding that we get for education. Cities and towns out here, there's just a real inequitable distribution of state funds for education, and we need to fix that. And the Fair Share Amendment is a way to do that and ensure that every child in every school district gets a comparable quality education.
So the Fair Share Amendment would put a different tax rate, a different percentage on high earners. So
That's correct.
Do you not feel that opens the door to a graduated income tax?
I don't, Kevin. It's very specific. It is on incomes over $1 million. It's a 4% tax. That's it. And I know somebody had said once if the Fair Share Amendment passed and it was established at 4%, that the legislature would then be able to raise that in the future, and that's not true. The legislature, in order to raise that from the 4%, would have to go back through the constitutional amendment process.
Senator, the Fair Share Amendment, does that open the door to a graduated income tax?
Absolutely, it will open a door to the graduated income tax. Now we can bring in revenue by helping our economy, by helping companies expand and grow and create jobs and putting people to work. That's what we're supposed to do. That's our responsibility. Our responsibility is not to first tax people. It does not work. Graduated income tax, to me, is actually taxation without representation, without you knowing. So absolutely, I will never support it. And this Fair Share tax amendment, when it goes to the state legislature, that will become a graduated income tax.
Issue 3, it has been nearly 2 years since voters approved a ballot initiative legalizing recreational marijuana. And while a handful of companies obtained provisional licenses and are awaiting final approvals, there are still no retail shops in Massachusetts. Advocates say Massachusetts is losing out on $175,000 per day in tax revenue and are accusing the Cannabis Control Commission of dragging their feet. How would you grade the Cannabis Commission's work so far? And if it is a failing grade, would you support legislative action to ensure the directives of the voters are enacted? Senator.
I think the estimate so far is that we've lost about $67 to $75 million already. I've been a manager in the private sector for 23 years, managing personnel on 3 continents. I've been responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I can tell you something, if these people were my employees, they would have been fired. So the people have spoken 2 years ago. They passed this ballot question. And we commissioned a group of people to create policies and regulations 1 year ago. And this commission has failed. And they are behind, 3 months behind in passing policies, handing down guidelines and regulations to the towns and cities. And they should be held accountable.
Councilor Zephyr.
Thank you very much. I am not going to disagree with you. I think the Cannabis Control Commission could do a much better job. I think it's taken way too long for them to roll out their regulations. If you're looking for a grade, I would give them a C-. I wouldn't flunk them. I think it's a very complicated issue. I think they're being overly cautious, which I know is frustrating for people. And I think it's better, honestly, for them to get it done right than to get it done fast. I understand people's frustration. I hope that they move faster, but I think they're just being overly cautious.
Here's the difference with someone like myself with a lengthy private sector experience. We have people serving on this commission making well over $120,000 a year. And their job is to deliver, and they have not delivered. So Kevin, my grade for them, being a manager in the private sector, if they were my employees, they would have been let go.
Issue 4. This year, Massachusetts enacted the so-called red flag law. One of the co-sponsors of that law, Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, is promising that she will be coming back to the legislature next session with more of what she calls new gun safety regulations, including a limit to the number of firearms an individual can purchase each year. Would you be open to voting in favor of further gun control laws, or do you believe the current laws in Massachusetts are enough? Councilor Zephyr.
Thank you. Without seeing the details and without really understanding what was being proposed, it would be hard to comment. I mean, I just couldn't comment on that. I fully support the Second Amendment. I support hunters and sportsmen and women using guns in all of their outdoor activities. And I certainly understand and respect and support people's right to arm themselves for their own personal protection. I would have supported the red flag bill. I think that the red flag bill is common sense, bipartisan support gun safety legislation that allows a judge to temporarily revoke a person's firearm and license if they are deemed to be a danger to themselves or others. The Massachusetts State Chiefs of Police, Governor Baker signed the bill and had lots of nice things to say about it, was very supportive of it, and both parties' majority and minority leaders in the House and Senate also supported that bill. So common sense gun control, I think we have in Massachusetts. I really can't comment on Senator Chang Diaz's proposals unless I saw them and really knew what she was proposing. My opponent, I do want to point out, is the only senator in the Senate, the Massachusetts Senate, who voted against the red flag gun bill.
Senator Tran.
And I am very proud of that vote. And I am very familiar with the amendment that my senator colleague, Senator Chang Diaz, proposed. I worked very closely with my Senate colleagues to remove that amendment from the red flag. And there's nothing about the red flag bill. Actually, it's called an act relative to firearms. That's what it's supposed. That's the real name of it. And there's nothing common sense about it. And I'll tell you why. Because it started as an act temporarily remove firearms from dangerous and suicidal individuals with many mental health components in there, which I would have voted for. But then it changed completely. They removed all mental health components, and they changed the name to an act relative to firearms. And if you take that bill and you remove the word firearms and you replace it with anything, it would apply to that. So this bill is very dangerous. It sets a precedent that allows the government to go after your personal property, and I am very proud that I voted against it, and I'm very proud of my support for the Second Amendment, because more laws that we pass in this state, meaning that all it does is that those laws will go against law-abiding citizens. Criminals, they will never, ever obey by any laws we pass.
It's also known as ERPA, which is Emergency Restrictive Protection Order. So that really tells a story about it. It's really in cases where people are deemed to be an immediate danger to themselves or others. It allows due process, which is why Governor Baker supported it. And I believe it had tremendous bipartisan support. The Massachusetts Chiefs of Police all supported it. Again, the leadership in both Democratic and Republican leadership supported this bill. It was thoroughly vetted and evaluated. So, and in terms of the mental health component, the legislature this year supported mental health funding. So mental health funding is able to be found for people who might have their guns taken away after they've had a hearing before a judge, and they would be provided mental health services. So I'm not concerned that people wouldn't get the mental health services that they need, because they will.
So ERPO, Extreme Risk Protection Order, that pertains to the initial bill that I spoke about. And the initial bill is an act temporarily to remove firearms from dangerous and suicidal individuals. That's what it's for. And it got changed to an act relative to firearms. Then the name went from ERPO to red flag. It's not ERPO anymore, it's red flag. So there's no mental health components. In the red flag, if your license to carry and your firearms are taken away, and you go in front of the judge, and the judge deems you to have mental health issues and unstable, they will keep your firearms, they will keep your license to carry, and they will let you go into the public with no help whatsoever. That's what the bill is all about. There's no common sense in this bill.
I think there's, I think that there's a ton of common sense, and my understanding is that this bill is going to save lives. Right now, if you are a gun owner and the chief of police or whoever is the local permitting authority wants to take your gun away and feels that they have good reason to do that, they can do that. And there is no process for allowing that gun to be returned. This bill, an act relative to firearms, includes a process so that after temporarily removing a firearm and license from an individual, there is a process for that person to get that gun and that license back.
I'm glad that my opponent now realizes what the real name of this bill is. And I can tell you one thing, I'm not sent to the state Senate to work for people out of the district, to listen to other legislators that do not represent my district. I'm up there to represent the people in this district, and I'm very proud of that vote.
Issue 5, as a legislature, collaboration and partnerships are essential to getting things accomplished. In this race, all 3 of the district's mayors are supporting Senator Tran. Conversely, the 3 state representatives are supporting Councilor Zephyr. If you win in November, how will you leverage those positive partnerships to achieve results? And what specifically will you do to try to repair any relationships that may now be fractured? Senator Tran.
I think there's a lot of discussions out there, and people don't realize the relationships that I have built with people on both sides of the aisle, including the Democratic representatives in my delegation. If you ask them, they will tell you that I have helped advance some of the bills through the Senate. So not only am I being able to work with Democratic legislators, I have endorsements from all 3 mayors in this district, a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent. Now, I should also add, I was recently endorsed by our former state senator, Bob Antonioni, who has been the state senator for this district for 15 years, a lifelong Democrat. That tells you something, that I have tremendous support from people on both sides of the aisle, and my results, the accomplishments and the results that I have delivered in the last 8 months speak volume.
Councilor Zephyr.
Thank you very much. I actually have been endorsed by 5 of the state representatives from the district. Representative Hay, Representative Higgins, Representative Naughton, Representative Hogan, and Representative Jen Benson. So the people that are crucial to getting anything done across the district that I will have to work together, they've endorsed me. So going forward, I have tremendous working relationships with 5 out of the 6 members of the delegation, and also have very good relationships. I have a very good relationship with Mark Hawk that I expect will continue after that. I have a personal friendship that goes back 35 years with Mayor Di Natale, and I expect that that will continue in the future. So I look forward, and one thing that I do bring to the table is I am a consensus builder. I know how to work with other people to move things forward. You can't get anything done in the legislature as a one-person operation. That's just not the way legislation works. That's not the way the Senate works. You have to build coalitions, you have to work with other people, and you have to communicate with other people. And that is something that I have done over and over again, both in my work at Ginny's Helping Hand and also as a Leominster City Councilor. So I look forward to taking those consensus building skills along with those endorsements into the state Senate.
So the endorsement that I received from former state senator Bob Antonioni, who also wrote a letter to the editor, he specifically mentioned before he endorsed me that he called my colleagues to ask them what my relationships are with them. And to his astonishment, that they responded that I had incredible relationships with them. And that is the reason how I was able to secure 53 projects totaling $29.6 million for the district, across the district, from Gardner to Clinton, and all the cities and towns between. So communication and collaboration, I have done them.
The state representative from Fitchburg, the state representative from Leominster, the state representative from Clinton, Lancaster, as well as Bolton, Berlin, they are all supporting me and have endorsed me.
Issue 6, question 1 on the November ballot would limit the ratio of nurses to patients. Some nurses' unions support it, saying it will provide better levels of care, while some hospitals oppose it, saying the cost could result in more closures and rationing of care. Where do you stand on question 1, Councillor Zephyr?
I support question 1. I have spent a lot of time in hospitals over the last 10 years with a variety of very ill family members. My husband was very sick at one time. A very dear friend of mine was sick last fall. And in a variety of different hospital settings. I've been to Leominster Hospital, St. Vincent's Hospital, UMass Memorial Healthcare, Mass General. And that experience has taught me that the care of very sick people varies tremendously by hospital. And that's why I am supporting this. There are a lot of things that are broken with the healthcare system. I think improving patient safety with safe patient ratios is a very, very important step in the right direction. We need to take care of patients. Bedside nurses are the first offense against somebody getting sicker and readmitted to a hospital. So I support question 1.
Senator Tran.
Well, this is pretty easy to answer, Kevin, because you have followed my political career. You know what I've done in the past. You know how I vote. Ballot questions are not in the purview of a legislator. It's in the purview of the voters. And how I'm going to act on this ballot question is how the voters will tell me how to act on November 6th. The voters will decide. The voters will tell me how to legislate this ballot questions on November 6th. Now, one of the things that I really have to say and is that I really dislike ballot questions. Ballot questions are written in one perspective only. They don't provide both perspectives. And most of the time, ballot questions do not provide you facts and data. So the one thing that I tell the voters all the time is that make sure you do your homework, make sure you do your research, make sure you know the facts and data before you go to the poll and vote for any question on the ballot. One of the things that we should also put on the table is that the recent poll came out from UMass Lowell puts the ballot question behind by 51 to 43. So that's something that the voters should also take into consideration.
Issue 7, State Representative Jennifer Benson of Lunenburg has submitted a bill to establish a carbon tax intended as a deterrent against using fossil fuels, as well as a way to fund alternative energy sources. The fee would be paid at the point of purchase of fossil fuels, which means it would be paid when you fill up your car at the gas station, when home heating oil is delivered, and when you get your monthly gas bill. Do you support Representative Benson's bill, Senator?
Now, first of all, I'm not familiar with the bill. If a bill like this comes to the Senate, I rely on one of my colleagues, and he is very versed in environmental bills and things like this. But I can tell you one thing, after listening to what you just said, Kevin, anything that increase taxes or institute a new tax, I have to look at that very carefully. Because right now, our economy is great. We're realizing $1.1 billion in surplus. I don't want to do anything that's going to place another burden on the shoulders of the hard-working families in this state, or do anything that would place a burden on the economy, because we're doing well. People don't want the taxes raised, and certainly I'm not going to do that.
Councillor Zephyr.
Without knowing the specifics, the particulars of that bill, it's really hard to comment. I do know Representative Benson, and I know that she's done a lot of work on environmental issues, very concerned about climate change, and I'm sure that this carbon tax proposal is well thought out, and unfortunately I just don't have the details to really comment in any kind of meaningful way.
Okay, we're going to go to closing statements, and we will start with Senator Tran.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Kevin, for having me on here tonight, and also thank you to the people at home watching and listening. My name is State Senator Dean Tran. I wasn't born here. I was born in a war-torn country, drifted in the ocean for days on a wooden boat, drinking salt water, and almost died. I emigrated to the United States at the age of 4. Before that, spent 2 years in one of the toughest refugee camps in the world. I overcame a lot of obstacles, including racism, discrimination, and prejudice. My story has been incredible. I was able to went through the Fitchburg High School system and graduate from Brandeis University. had a very successful career in the private sector, and then went on to being the first minority elected in the city of Fitchburg. After that, became the first minority to be elected to the state senate from this district. So I know what hard work is. I'm asking you for your support and your vote on Tuesday, November 6th. I can promise you, and I believe in hard work, transparency, and serving you. So thank you very much.
Councilor Zephyr.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you for having us. It was always a really good forum to talk about the issues. I was thinking back a few months back when I was having a nice quiet Saturday evening, had just sat down for dinner and got a call from Eladia Romero, who works for Congressman Jim McGovern. Leslie Borges, the Leominster Police Department domestic violence coordinator, was at the Motel 6 in Leominster with a mom and her 9-year-old daughter. They had fled their home, had nowhere to go, and they needed emergency help. So Eladia was calling me to ask if I could help them. I immediately went to meet Leslie, Veronica, and her daughter. I made arrangements with the motel for them to stay there for a few days until they could sort out their travel arrangements and figure out a way to get to her family who lives out of state. A few days later, Veronica called me to say thank you very much, and her daughter and her were out of harm's way and on their way to a new safe home. So as executive director of Ginny's Helping Hand for the last 5 years, I've helped thousands of people like Veronica and others. We have thousands of people who come to us every year for assistance at Ginny's. I understand firsthand the needs of this district. I served for 12 years on the board of Our Father's House in Fitchburg fighting homelessness. I've served on the Leominster Education Foundation supporting public schools and classroom teachers. As a 5-term city councilor, I've fought for better funding for our public schools and have consistently supported people in their homes and in their neighborhoods. I don't just talk about helping people across the region, I do it every day. If you want a state senator who will bring new vocational education and skills training programs to attract good jobs, if you want a senator who's going to fight for more school funding, and if you want somebody to make sure that we get our fair share of state money to fix our crumbling roads and improve public transportation, if you want a state senator who will lead the fight on issues that are important to you, like quality, accessible, community-based health care, then you should vote for me. My mother raised 4 children on her own. I know what it's like to struggle. I want to make sure that everyone in this district has the same opportunities that I did. I want to make sure they can get a good education, they can do meaningful work, they can raise a family, and they can buy a home. I see many exciting opportunities across this district, and to make them happen, we need a strong advocate and a real leader in the Senate. I'm running for the state Senate to continue the important work that I do now, and I will continue to do for you. I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Zephyr. Senator Tran, we have about a minute to go, so let's ask the most important question of the night. October is here, it's fall. What do you think? Pumpkin spice or apple cinnamon? What are you going for? What's your favorite fall flavor?
Now I have to say pumpkin spice, because my wife loves pumpkin spice, and if I don't say that, I'm in deep doodle.
I actually really like pumpkin spice, so I would go with pumpkin spice.
So we have agreement.
We do.
Very good.
We do. Pumpkin spice donuts. Pumpkin spice donuts.
Pumpkin spice latte.
Oh, I was thinking donuts. I was thinking donuts from Dunkin' Donuts, Kevin.
So we end on agreement. Great way to end it. Thank you, Councilor Zephyr. Thank you, Senator Tran.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. The election is November 6th, and that wraps it up for this Flap TV Debate Series 18. Thank you. Bye-bye. Very good.